Hello, this is Paolo, your host. This is Conversations in Artificial Intelligence. And today we're going to go into a very interesting application of artificial intelligence around real-time translation. Now, you might be familiar with translators such as the one from Google that has made this operation popular. However, till today, it's not really possible to make translation real-time. What we're going to see today is a very interesting Silicon Valley startup that is tackling this problem and wants to allow people to talk simultaneously in different languages. So with me today, we have Lakshman Rathnam, who is the CEO and founder of Wordly. How are you, Lakshman?
I'm doing well, Paolo. Thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Let's introduce our audience a little bit. How did you stumble upon this idea of applying artificial intelligence for real-time translation?
Yeah, so I've been a technologist for all my professional life. I've always been on the cutting edge of technologies, working with consumer electronics. And I was very enamored when machine learning and AI were making some great progress. And I was in the speech and input mechanisms, human-machine interface. And speech is now human-machine interface, the de facto method of human-machine interface. So I got enamored and I got into this field of speech and artificial intelligence.
So was it difficult to jump full-time, leaving your day job and getting into the startup mode?
Absolutely. I think everybody goes through this. You know, when you have an idea, it takes time for it to gain traction, to convince yourself as well as convince other people to buy into your idea. So it's always a hard beginning, but it's very fruitful as you go through in the process.
Convince our audience that the world needs real-time translation. Why do we need it?
Well, you know, this is an old story. People have been trying to communicate across language barriers forever. Every region has their own language. You know the story of, perhaps the audience knows the story of the Tower of Babel. It's very important for people to communicate, for trade, for commerce, and to understand each other as to what their point of view is or what they're trading. As the economy and the world shrinks, people have to communicate, and increase in global trade requires people to communicate across language barriers.
When real-time translation is needed? I mean, it can be a conference, it can be a trade show, it could be, you know, even politics or international meetings. When it is needed?
The point of real-time translation is to save time and also reduce the amount of misunderstanding that one can have during this conversation. If people have to have natural conversations, it needs to be real-time, without changing the modalities of human conversation. Just like how you and I are talking right now, imagine that if we spoke different languages, and if there was somebody in between trying to interpret or translate for each of us. You know, that is a leisure activity. Think of a business activity where this time is very constrained, and time is money, and productivity and efficiency are very important. And this is where real-time translation is very critical.
Are there some numbers that we can utilize to quantify here what we're looking at?
All we can say is that the number is very huge. Now, in terms of the number of people that require translation, today the estimate is that there's about $40 billion being spent for translation for businesses. That includes content, that includes conversation. That means there is definitely a huge market out there. But as you said earlier on, many people don't use translation services today because it is very expensive. They try to use body language or try to get away without using translation. That is going to change soon by having tools and utilities that can help people have conversations in real time across language barriers.
So when we dig into this particular sector, are there specific sub-markets that you're looking at?
There are so many possible applications for real-time translation. But where we're trying to get into the market now is in the conferences and the trade shows, as you mentioned earlier. This is where we believe that we can get into the market very efficiently and also get some product feedback to improve our product functionality as we enter into other markets. We are also seeing there's interest in broadcast, in closed captioning for live TVs. There are multiple applications in training, in education, where people do require real-time translation to get to the global audience.
If you allow me, why do you believe at this stage that the trade shows and conferences is the best market to target first?
Let me tell you a story. We met a person who just hosted a conference event, and for a 3-day event for one language for translation, it cost her $35,000 to produce the event. Just for the translation, it cost her $35,000. Now, that was for one language. She had people from other countries who were also visiting, but could not cater to them. And the translation was only for the keynote and not for the breakout sessions. So there was dissatisfaction even after providing and spending so much money. What we want to do is provide language on demand, where our application can allow for people to pick a language and attend the conference on their own device. They can see the translation and hear the translation on their own devices with their own headsets. We make it very simple.
Now, from a product perspective, for people to adopt a new technology, there is kind of a threshold that the technology has to overcome. So where are you at? And if you like, how dependable is today this technology in translating real time?
The technology is not possible till today, but there are reasons why it is possible today. One is that machine learning and AI have made tremendous progress in the last few years. Everybody is aware of that. Cloud computing and smartphone penetration is ubiquitous. And people are accepting voice as a method of human-machine interface. The threshold for acceptance is that because of voice being accepted as a human-machine interface, people accept some of the new kinds of mistakes that machines do that are different from what humans do. And that's why this is very acceptable at this time.
What type of, if you like, evidences do we have today the level reached is satisfactory for the use case that you are serving?
The level of acceptance or the level of error is about the same between a human and a machine. Machines make different errors. Humans make different errors. Now, what machines do is that if during a conversation I make a mistake, the machine repeats that mistake, whereas humans don't repeat my mistake while doing the translation. But humans are prone to omitting certain information, which machines don't. So I think there is a good handshake between the two, or a good compromise between the two, and they work for different scenarios. And we are focused with our application on the particular scenario where we are able to cater to a large audience and increase the understanding of that audience compared to what they'd have without any translation.
So until a few years ago, there was this concept of fully automated solution and human-in-the-loop solution. So the human-in-the-loop solution is basically a solution where the technology gathers a portion of the work or the task, but then there is always a human that either checks or is doing a part of the job. So this is a case where we have real time. Is it, just for the clarity to our audience, is it a completely automated solution, or is there a human in the loop anywhere in this type of real-time translation?
Yeah, in our solution, we provide it is fully automated. It's all machine learning, AI, and it's done in the cloud.
So how many languages do you support, and how many different languages you can translate from and to?
If you look at the technology today, there are solutions that cater to many languages. What we have done is we have focused on the languages that cater and that provide good user experience and also fit the largest population for business communication. So today we support 15 languages, and we allow for translation between those 15 languages. So it could be any language to any language among the 15 by 15. You can do from Japanese to English, Korean, Chinese, and other languages all simultaneously and in real time, which is what we do. We don't have to restrict from one language to one language. We do one language to the 14 other languages that we support.
So when we look at this translation, is this translation a written translation, or is it augmented with, if you like, an artificial voice that is speaking?
Right, so we do both. That is the beauty of our solution, is that people can read the translation and they can hear the original speaker in their own voice, so they can get the intonation, or they can also hear the translation in a synthetic voice. So we provide for both. We have tested this out with our audience. The feedback has been mutual in the sense that some people like to have the written text and some people like to hear the audio, and some people like to have both. So we provide them with the choice and they can pick what they want to do.
So where do you see the future? Like what type of application do you envision? Where do you see things going 4 or 5 years from now?
I want to say it's a reductive technology. What that means is when the cost of a product comes down or a technology comes down by an order of magnitude, and as you mentioned, it'll explode the market. It'll find new use cases to penetrate. And we are still discovering some of those use cases as we are building out our product and exploring our market. So some of the examples that I can tell you are broadcasts, like you mentioned, is a natural area, webinars, corporate training, education space. Online education itself is expanding, and we expect perhaps there is a big market out there. Online gaming is big, and they're themselves expanding in the market. And now online gaming is going international, and we expect that to cross boundaries. So the potential is just immense.
So in terms of the technology itself, how do you think it will evolve in the next 5 years? So what it is that it's not possible today that will be possible in 5 years from now?
With artificial intelligence, I think the speed, even today, there is a latency in predictability of the speech when you do a translation, because I have to finish the sentence before it can be translated to the other language because of the grammar. Now, I think those things are going to speed up. Eventually, I also believe that AI will be not on the cloud, but on the edge. That will make things much faster. And some of these technologies will be more ubiquitous, where you don't need cloud computing, but everything will be on device.
What type of technological innovation we will need for both of those? Do you think we need more better hardware? Do you think we need better algorithms?
Yeah, I think most of that is happening in the hardware side, where these neural networks are being implemented into integrated circuits that are then going to be included into your smartphones. Today, they're big enough and they're running in the cloud. In a few years, I think companies are already working on it right now, and these will be in your handhelds, and you will have artificial intelligence in your hand, in the palm of your hand.
So one of the things that people are worried about artificial intelligence is this massive disruption of jobs and workforce. There is a lot of talks going on around the retail industry particularly, and the logistic and transportation industry that today in the US alone represent a good chunk of the economy, where people that have no degrees, that haven't gone to school, basically go and find jobs. And there is a lot of fear that all these jobs will go away. So What do you make of the impact in terms of labor and job opportunities that AI is having in your specific field?
I believe that humans and AI, human workforce and AI workforce there's a place for both. The AI workforce will take over some of the workforce that humans don't want to do. I think there's a happy medium between the two.
What do you think is going to happen? Like a couple of examples that could come to your mind when this technology will go out there and become pervasive.
Right. So I think this is going to increase trade and productivity. So you can imagine that if you did not have translation, you could not sell to certain segments of the population because you just don't know their language. Now, this is going to increase that sales, which is then going to increase some of the employment or get more productivity. I heard in a recent podcast, and I can't remember the name of the podcast, that if you normalize all political and geographical boundaries, and if you could overcome language barrier, trade would increase by 10%. That is a huge number. So that's what V10 will really help increase productivity, increase trade, increase jobs, be helpful for the people.
So that's very interesting to me. I want to just make this brief comment with the audience out there. So you see here, it's a clear and crispy example of how a new technology and innovation actually promotes economy rather than depressing it. And of course, there is a transformation that happens. During the transformation, a portion of jobs gets lost, but new ones gets created. But here is, without going into the details of which one is right and which trends is more important, whether the loss of jobs or the creation, I just want to give you an example. And this is a perfect example, I would say, of how a new technology is basically creating opportunities for people to invent new things, to invent new jobs, but also to increase trade. So what Lakshman is saying is basically, now I can sell to a bunch of people that I couldn't do before. So I could give up my job today, take his technology and start to sell Italian shoes to a subpopulation in India at a certain price, which I couldn't do before because I had necessarily to use English. Maybe in that part of the country, they don't use English. I'm just making an example. And so you start to create now, it's a job for me, an opportunity for them, and so on and so forth. So with that said, Lakshman, I want to really thank you for taking your time. This is very interesting. It is a very promising technology to bring to light, and it's a very interesting business model. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Paolo. I appreciate it, and thanks for making time to do this.
It was my pleasure. And for our audience, if you have questions on this particular episode, just comment below. If you have other suggestions, please reach out to me. Thank you so much, and goodbye, everybody.